have chaplains that are working in the prison system and working with rehabilitation, and they say this is one of the big problems, that all these prisoners, to be rehabilitated, are horribly traumatized, and they don't have the tools to deliver the information, because part of what the training is not that you have to change your technique, and not that you have to change the information you need to deliver, but you may need to understand why you need a different kind of delivery system, or how it's working. Somebody will say to somebody, oh, I know exactly how you feel. And first of all, with a traumatized person, there's always, which is stressed throughout all the training, there's also always that respect, unless you know them very well and you've already gotten permission, that you don't touch somebody else. You don't come into their bodily space, because one of the things that happens with trauma is you felt you could die or were totally helpless to prevent serious harm to yourself or others from occurring, which means you're helpless. So if I touch you and you're in a position where you already believe that this is a dangerous place and you're helpless, that boundary violation for a traumatized person is magnified. Now, I've worked with sexually abused women, and touch is very important. People will tell you, oh no, you can't touch them. Yes, you can. As you approach them, as you get permission, we would build up a whole series of experiences in which she knew that I could be trusted, because the feeling that you're in the room with a man and you've been sexually abused, and that there can be a healing touch rather than an abusive touch, is worth 10,000 words. But you can't do that just on intuition, and you can't do that by rote. And that's something that I believe, and I've seen from my training people, you can teach people how to read the Gestalt of the other person and how to ask for that permission. That's a very different message than, oh, I understand what you went through. And one of the things that I think is beautiful and is part of the training is the use of metaphors, and I think that's often the way that the traumatized person will communicate to you.
And that's a way in.
That's a way in, and you have to hear that metaphor and then not say, well, what did you mean by that? That's how I was trained as a psychoanalyst, or give them interpretation. And I'm not saying that the intellect at a certain point, and that's part of the training, helps the person to reintegrate and put their story in context. If you have somebody who's dissociated, if you can get them to be in their body and stay with you for 20 seconds more in that session than they did the week before, you've achieved a lot.
So what's very interesting about this, and hearing you speak, is really this kind of invisible weaving in of the attitude.
I had a young man that had been kidnapped and he had lost a finger. He had seen many therapists. He was shocked that by our second session I put my hand out. And I said, I would like you to put your hand in mine. And he looked at me very strangely and he said, why? I said, I want to look at your finger. You lost your finger in this process. And he said, I've been with a lot of therapists. I've hidden my finger. Nobody ever asked to see my finger, and I always keep my hand hidden. I said, I noticed. I would appreciate seeing your finger. And he was a very handsome guy in his mid-20s. And I kind of teased him because he said, well, who's going to date me with a missing finger? And I said to him, but the finger is missing because you were kidnapped. You were kidnapped because you're very well educated and you're extraordinarily wealthy. As soon as a young lady sees part of a finger missing, you're top of her list. And he started laughing and laughing and laughing. And he said, you're teasing me, you're teasing me. But that was the sense of humor that he hadn't gone out on a date in over a year. Metaphorically, I think there's some other image problems. Yeah. But just the fact that I put my hand out and said, I want to know you, which I think any good therapist really does, but I think when you're taking in how you deliver that, and that will be in part of the training, the people who already have Gestalt training already have that imbued in them. a lot of the NLP training, there isn't a viable interchange. I was in a big struggle trying to figure out how to communicate a lot of this to some of the clients I worked with. And I went from therapist to therapist and friend to friend, and finally I was with a very good therapist from California, and she started to laugh and laugh and laugh, and she said, "You're looking for the 10 ways you communicate this." She said, but you already communicated, don't you know what you do? I said, well, I'm kind of, but she said, you have to be it. Get them to be it, and they will do it. And the clients will ask you, why do you know that's special? Because they will experience that authenticity. So I think that's one of my biggest focuses on this program, is that not to change anybody's style, not to change anybody's technique, but to help them decide what they have to modify so that they can be it and be really effective with the clients. And it will take the whole class to figure out some of that. I've had classes going problem solving of, okay, now how do you do a lesson plan? And you know, was it every bit as productive for the therapist to figure out, okay, how do we do a lesson plan that helps kids who come from traumatic environments reduce the trauma? Which somebody pointed out is that, you know, if you stand up and you just shift your weight from left to right when you're saying something, you automatically start left and right brain functioning, you're reprocessing. So a lesson plan in which the kids had to stand up or move around as they talked about different things, automatically, instead of sitting in their seats, which increases the traumatic experience. As an analyst, I wasn't trained to do that. But I certainly will have a patient who will say, don't lay down on the couch, stand up, look at me, we make eye contact so I know they're with me. And then as I'm talking to them about some painful experience, I start shifting my weight. They automatically will shift back and forth, and without realizing it, where they haven't been able to have any insight or memories and so on, they'll start getting memories because we've started a neurological reprocessing in the session by them standing in front of me. Now, when you use that, how you use that, whether it fits your personality. The program isn't going to teach the kind of stuff where you have to follow this protocol, because when the protocol controls you, you're not in attunement with your client. I know the protocol, and I'll reshape it. And I think that's what you do in the Gestalt training as well.
And I think that's really where they meet. You learn what you need to learn, and then, I wouldn't say you forget it, but it becomes part of the background.
Right.
And what's foreground is you with the client, and then what you need to know in that relationship comes in the moment. And I think that's really the meeting ground, and it's why I feel this program you know, really belongs as part of the Gestalt Center Trauma Program. Because it really is using Gestalt principles.
The training, whether it's in hypnotherapy or in trauma or a number of other things that I teach, really comes from, this is what I wish I had been taught so I could have had that kind of preparation. And that's what I put together in this program. What I knew was missing, where I was ineffective, and I know what I was taught by very well-intentioned people, but as I went out and did it and practiced in the field and then worked cross-culturally, I began to realize that I really didn't get taught many of the things that were quite simple that I needed to know.
The sense in being a teacher that you want people to like stand on your shoulders to take flight for themselves, you know, into their own.
They'll have enough to figure out
into
on their own.
And what's next to be developed that we haven't thought of yet, that doesn't exist yet.
I've got to be able to have you experience those concepts in a way that you feel it and can take it in. And I wish I had had that kind of teaching when I was doing all my other training.